1 in 5 Americans live with a mental health condition. Considering this is such a common issue, wouldn't it be expected that we as a society accept this and work together to understand and help our fellow citizens? Two of the most common mental health issues in America are anxiety and depression, and often these two are closely linked. But due to a lack of proper education and awareness of mental health issues, such as anxiety and depression, America still struggles with stigmas around the subject. Newer generations are now turning the wheels and beginning to more openly discuss these issues, shedding more light and more understanding on mental health in general. Although still a taboo subject, stigmas around anxiety and depression are slowly beginning to subside. To analyze this shift in our society's view of anxiety and depression, we'll chat with Jennifer Johnson, a student who has experienced anxiety and depression herself, and whose father grew up with the same struggles, but handled them in a very different way. I'm Nicolette Ellison, and this is Generations of Stigma.
I think it makes people uncomfortable, so I think a lot of the time people, especially who don't have any of those problems, just think like, oh, that's not possible. You can just I get bummed out, so why couldn't you just fix that, or go on a walk or something? You don't need any medication, or it's not a serious problem, because they think that they've experienced it too, when in reality it's not as severe as an actual diagnosis. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Also, just past portrayal in the media doesn't really focus on the seriousness, I would say, of the topic. It always deems people with mental health problems as crazy and just people you can't really rely on, but that's really not the case in a lot of scenarios. So I think that definitely adds to the stigma around those two specifically.
Jennifer also notes how one of the leading causes of stigma, along with the misrepresentations in media, is basic lack of knowledge around the subjects.
Historically, looking at the stigma around certain things, it just takes a lot of bringing it to the surface. It just takes a lot of conversation, and since people are still a little bit uncomfortable talking about mental illness, it's kind of hard for that conversation to get started, I think. But I also think it lies in lack of education on the subject, because other people don't really want to approach them and say how are you feeling, and they don't want to offend them or anything. And so they just don't talk about it, and they don't learn how to act, or they don't even ask people how they should act around them. Just talking about it and bringing it into our education system would have a huge difference.
Often this worry about offending someone who is mentally ill can worsen that person's own view of their mental illness. Psychology Today notes that social distancing is often a result of mental health stigmas. This can lead to a worsening of both mental and physical health, sometimes even resulting in death. This is often referred to as the lethality of loneliness. This kind of thinking, to leave the mentally ill alone and let them fend for themselves, seems to come from older generations. Johnson discusses the kind of environment that her father grew up in and how that shaped his self-treatment.
Just looking even at the politics of older generations, they tend to be more conservative, more you need to fix this problem by yourself, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, that kind of mentality. And I think especially for our parents, their parents probably had even more so of a fix yourself kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with you, you just need to get over it kind of an attitude towards it. So I think asking for help for at least, I know specifically with masculinity especially, has a lot to do, I think, with the admittance of needing help. So that, I think, has a lot to do, at least in my dad's case, with why he won't get help. And I think that's probably a lot of it is just the pride behind, being a man and not showing your weaknesses, but in reality it's just, breaking you down even more, and everyone can tell. the little conversation that we do have now is far beyond what they ever did have when they were younger. So it's just been normal to them for their whole life to not talk about that.
The conversation around mental illness is slowly growing. The National Alliance on Mental Illness notes how navigating life with a mental health condition can be tough, and the isolation, blame, and secrecy that is often encouraged by stigma can create huge challenges to reaching out, getting support, and living well. They also encourage to end stigma by talking openly, noticing media negativity, educating ourselves, and showing compassion to those with mental illness. Taking these steps can lead to a smarter, happier, and healthier society. This has been Generations of Stigma. Thank you for listening.